Hey everybody, what's going on? Rob Cesternino back here, and I'm so excited. This is so fun because we are checking in with our chief international survivor correspondent because we are so blessed to have here with us the great Shannon Guss. Shannon, how are you?
Rob, I am just I don't know all the words that I currently don't. I think I've used all the words this week already, but it's been a big week
Yes.
of
Big
Australian
week,
Survivor,
big
Rob.
week.
I don't know if
Okay,
you
just let me
heard.
just
Yeah.
do the just for everybody who's here. This is a Survivor Australian Survivor week 3 check-in. Okay. We're 3 weeks deep on Heroes versus Villains, the 10th season of Australian Survivor canonically. And of course, it was a big week. And what we said here that we were going to do after I was on the podcast with Shannon on the amazing Survivor Global coverage. Of course, Shannon broke down everything from this week with our great friend Nick Iadanza. And of course, you can hear that. What was it, 3 hours?
It was just over 3 hours, and people were like, "That's not enough." But I'm like, we
Not
also still have
enough.
a check-in. We've had so much content this
Yes.
week.
Okay, so we figured that it would be great if we could get Shannon here with us on the main feed to talk a little bit about what's going on in case people are not exactly following it, or maybe you're kind of casual and maybe there might be a good gateway to get more into Australian Survivor. Of course, we make it very easy for the patrons of Rob's podcast to get the links to watch the episodes, but there's plenty of other ways so that you can be watching Australian Survivor. And this has been a really great season. This is a great week to check in with you, Shannon. First off, how are you doing?
I'm great. I'm excited that people are excited. Like it just feels whenever there's a good survivor on and it feels like the community's in like a really good mood.
Mm-hmm.
That always makes me happy. And I love that everyone loved this week as much as I did, it seems. And it feels like everyone's jumping on. And I'm really excited to get to talk to you about it as well.
Okay, let me start here with my hottest of takes. And maybe you say
Oh,
maybe not that hot. Maybe you say like yeah, this is old news. Okay.
okay.
Shannon. Okay.
Yes.
9 episodes here into Australian Survivor Heroes versus Villains. Can I
Yes.
just say I'm pretty sure we could say at this hour. Tell me if I'm off base here. Australian Survivor is unobjectively superior to US Survivor in every measurable way.
Rob, that actually is a really hot take, I feel. Like that's a massive thing for you to say. Are you allowed to say that? I
And
don't know
maybe
that
I'm
I
late to the
agree.
party. Maybe I'm late to the party because let's debate it right now. In what way
Let's do it.
is the current version of US Survivor superior to Australian Survivor?
It's really hard. It's hard because would you be saying that 7 weeks into the last season of Australian Survivor, which was long,
Which I
which
didn't watch.
dragged?
Yes.
Exactly,
Yes.
exactly. But this is
Okay.
the thing about Australian Survivor. This is what you can say. Well, let's leave Survivor South Africa out of it because I truly believe like no one is, doing it like Survivor South Africa. But to talk about US versus AU,
Yeah.
at its best, Australian Survivor can be like this, like that
Right.
phenomenal that it's like,
Right.
how can you get there? But then the lows are very low. It's a very extreme franchise, and there are
Yeah.
massive issues that US Survivor doesn't have. Like obviously the diversity initiative that
Sure.
the US
Sure.
has had, the editing. You're okay with the Australian Survivor editing, but I think like generally like the more cohesive editing that US Survivor has.
Mm-hmm.
The twists of US Survivor you could go either way on, but they're more game breaking currently, and where we're usually at, not this season, but where we can get to Australian Survivor, we have to have non-eliminations. Like there are definitely flaws, but it's also extreme. It's long, it's big, and when that big is great, it's going to be hard for you to find greater. And luckily, that's where we're at this week and probably this season of Australian Survivor. And we also get it frequently, and I think that's a good thing
You
too.
get it frequently. Like I just feel
Every
like if
second season, I feel is like a
this
great season
okay,
of
yeah, and
Australian
again,
Survivor.
maybe I'm like jumping in because this is a great
Yeah.
season, but I just feel like that if you love this, U.S. Survivor is like non-alcoholic beer or diet soda. It's
Wow.
just everything that you would like, but much less of it, and in a much like worse package of I'm not here to like really like poop on the US Survivor. You brought up they do a great job with casting, no doubt. They do a
Yeah.
really good job of
Actually, the cold
consistently.
casting is better. probably,
Mm,
like without relying on those like returnees and tropes as well.
sure,
That's a
sure.
better thing across the board, I
Yeah,
think.
I think that from top to bottom they do a better job on the casting. But I'm talking about for the actual product that gets aired. I mean, that I don't even feel like it's the same show. It's so different. Just like thinking about this, like the amount of time that we've spent, and we're 9 episodes into this, and
Which is like
already this
11-ish
season,
hours. Yeah.
11-ish hours, we've spent more time with George and Shawnee and Simon and Jordy and all of it. Like we've spent more time with them than we've spent with the biggest characters from Survivor 43.
Yes, that is true. I mean, and I think the casting is a good example of that divide that I'm talking about. You will get some of the best casting in the world. Who can say at this point that George isn't one of the best Survivor characters, one of the most entertaining Survivor characters we've ever seen? That's the height, and it's not just George. Shawnee, Haley is as well. Like some of these characters in this season and across Australian Survivor, I totally agree. But then look at the other people that they cast. Like who was Fraser? Who was that guy? You
Right.
know, like he like doesn't have a candle
But
on
it
like
doesn't matter.
the most. It's consistency. It's the inconsistency and the consistency, but the inconsistency of Australian survival will take you to the top, but it will also take you to the lows. And you know, Rob, you're in it for the good haul. Would you know you're not going to be here for the lows. So the lows
That's
are
true.
low. The lows are
That's
very
true. I'm
low.
a fair weather
You're a
Australian
fair weather,
Survivor fan.
and that's the best way
Yeah.
to be. Like to get the
Yeah.
highs only. Like, oh, what a wonderful time for you.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so I'm really loving this season.
I can see that. I love that.
I'm loving your coverage. It was great once again. Of course, this week, of course, Australian Survivor spoilers to come in case you hadn't known that yet. It was all over social media. That's the episode 7, the first episode of this week. It was like leaked that this is going to be not Haley leaked. That it was leaked that this is going to be the best Survivor episode ever. Best tribal council ever. How does that happen, Shannon? How was there a leak of the episode? I feel like other than like times where like Jeff Probst has like alluded to something, like we've never had that with US Survivor.
I honestly don't know. I don't know if like I mean, I guess maybe like you know, I like watched the episodes earlier for Talking Tribal anyway, earlier in the week. So I don't know if like the media generally get screeners or if like they specifically sent out like this screener to the media because it seemed like a lot of people like knew and were tweeting about it. I think they wanted to know. I mean, that's been a big part. That's a big part of Australian Survivor too. It's much more reality TV than I think like the game of US Survivor and certainly what like pure Survivor used to be. It's interesting you say that like different shows. I feel like they've both gotten away from pure Survivor, but in like opposite directions. Clearly with like Days Played as an example. So they're very different from where we started, but like diverged extremely at a point. So the reality TV aspect and the fact that we're going against the biggest show in Australia, please don't laugh, Married at First Sight continues to be true. We need eyes on screens and we've been getting them, but we need to say things like biggest, best tribal council ever. And then for it to deliver on that and for people to be like, I think you might be right, was an incredible thing. So people are watching now, I think, just because of that. They caught up.
Marketing
it was early enough in the season. Yeah. And having heard, I think, after the fact that the tribal council delivered, we're only 7 episodes in, which is only several hours of your time. So people caught up and people are now into it and hopefully can maintain this height and this level. Because also I think the whole week was great. Episode 9 was also really, really fun. So people are in it now and we can't lose them. I think that's the big thing.
Okay. Yeah. Everybody in Australia, check out Australian Survivor for sure.
Everyone, legally watch the show.
Okay. Now, you and Nick, and it was so nice to hear Nick on the podcast this week. Again, what a treasure he is. But you and Nick went through it in great detail. Make sure you subscribe to Shannon's coverage, robinswebsite.com/global feed. I'd love to talk about this tribal council because I will say I loved the spectacle of it so much. And I adore George. Can I ask a question that George as a political operative, like is he like a highly sought after like political operative, or is he just known for his Survivor career?
No, I think he worked in the Labour Party. He's like doing really the Survivor thing a lot. He wasn't like I think like running for anything yet. Maybe in the future we could all be under King George's
Does he
rule.
run for office or he's
no,
like
I don't know.
manages like somebody's campaign?
Yeah. He's like he works in like the office basically. He worked and that's what it was. And I think they Australian Survivor love the profession of it all. So like political operative became the thing. Yeah. And now it's a very big part of his game, it seems.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he's like, this is why
So
I'm a political operative. I'm like, how much are you doing that in your day-to-day life? Like yelling at Simon, you know?
do a reality show about George like managing somebody's political campaign and then like coming in the office like they're like, I got it, here's what we do, I don't know, George, no, trust me, we have to do this. Anyway, so I just absolutely adored the spectacle of it, and then for the reveal to come after all that, I just think that it hasn't gotten enough credit. I don't think that the actual edit of the episode I thought was brilliant to have the reveal done in that way. Because if you're one of the Survivor editors or the Survivor post production team, there's probably 10 different ways you could tell that story.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I said I compared it to The Genius, and that they chose
Yes.
to omit the right amount of information while giving you enough. And when a Survivor episode for me, I always think back to like the Jeremy Collins boot and San Juan Del Sur. That to me is perfect Survivor. If you have two options and one person goes, yeah, like okay, interesting, or it's tense, who's gonna go? To not understand what happened, we all hate that. But to have like a thing you didn't consider, maybe until the very, very end, this third option come through, but then for it to make complete sense is perfect Survivor composition, I think.
Yeah, and then when the votes start to come out, and it's Frazier, and he ends up being the person to go home, and then Simon stays. I'm sorry, that Steve stays. Just like chef's kiss. I loved it. I loved it so much.
Yeah.
That being said, Shannon, I know that you and Nick both said, okay, who am I to quibble with George that he made a great move. But I do wonder if that was the right move in that spot.
Yeah, I feel like it was for me. I think for me, the way that I mean, obviously, I talk about it way more with Nick, and I would encourage different. We did like an hour 20 just on like every single part of the move.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like for me, the George move is the kind of thing that seems amazing in the moment because it's such a spectacle. And then you start thinking about it, you're like, but was it good? Because, he loses these relationships. It's like very, very extreme. And then you think about it a little more and you're like, no, it's actually even better than what I thought, for all the reasons of like in a future tribal council, if they go back with just Simon and an idol and the five of them, they're going to lose those relationships anyway. So we gain Stevie in that. If you think about just like not just the execution and the way that it's done, but I think there was a lot of logic to keeping someone as loyal as Stevie, who literally is like, if you want loyalty, get a dog, but I think is that like very, very loyal person in the game, and who like it immediately works so well where he's like to Simon, we're not friends. Like it feels like he really, really brought Stevie in, has been blessed to be with him on a swap now. I think to gain that when he could see the losses to come, even if they just go back to another tribal council because they've been kind of snookered here with Simon's quote unquote idol, to me, it makes logical sense rather than just being like, clearly, I think we can all agree, incredible to watch and amazingly executed.
Well, I would just love to just talk through the counterpoint of it, because
Yes,
I feel
please.
like
Yes.
I think it's interesting to talk about. And one, I never want to be like the wet blanket. Like I feel like that when Jesse, the closest thing we have recent in US Survivor is the Jesse move with Cody. And ultimately it didn't work out for Jesse that he did it, but I love that he did it. I was so happy
Yes.
for to have that given to us, and for George to have done this. This was such a gift that we got from this. And I do think that for George, like perhaps like his win condition of like putting on the greatest tribal council of all time might be different than ultimately the win condition of just winning the game.
That's true, and I think that we talk about that for, like, the early days of US Survivor. We talk about, like, Colby taking Tina and having that hero status, which was of value to him, like, financial value as well for the person he was in society at that time. And not that, like, Australian Survivors at that point, but I do think, like, George's career as a Survivor player at this point, who probably will play many, many times, who's, like, on Cameo, who's, like, George the Survivor player doing meet and greets. For people saying, like, "Oh, he needs to, like, fly under the radar," I don't think it's something George can do as who he is as a human, but I also think it doesn't work for the person he's trying to be. If he comes on and he's just super, super quiet, makes it really, really fun, then eventually people are anyway like, "Hey, King George," and swipe him, and we got nothing from him except like probably some really fun confessionals. It's not enough. This is who he has to be in the lore of Australian Survivor and in like the Survivor career that he's building.
Okay. So my biggest quibble with the move was
Yes.
that I felt like that George had, this really interesting situation going on with the Joker, with Jordy. And Jordy even says in the next episode, like, well, why, like, why did you do this? Like, I was like,
Yeah.
I was with you against Simon, why did you blow it up? And we also, in this very week, had a tribe swap. Like, if this was the original heroes versus villains from US Survivor and we were going to like go down to the merge and we weren't going to have a tribe swap, like, I feel like I see the, like, okay, I have to destroy the like guys alliance here on the, like, the Meat Tray Junior alliance here on the villains tribe. And that was like a really important goal. But because they knew like a swap was coming, and Frazier, like, was like, I feel like a very valuable potential ally. I have some reservations.
It comes down to what we always say right before a swap, and the swap was like slightly later than it's been recently, like an episode or so. And they do always swap in Australian Survivor, and it's hard to think that they wouldn't, as much as JLP is being coy because it's so long. But
Mm-hmm.
like, I think what happened was because they never went back to a tribal council, which was pretty lucky. They're a much weaker tribe, and they win that challenge because, as we know, Shiny threw it. So because of that, it makes the move look worse because we never got to go back and see what George had set up. He'd set up these phenomenal pieces, in knowing that he would have full control there and be in the, you know, the ability to even flush Simon's idol and still get rid of Geordie and just have all the power there. And he never got to see it play out because they did swap and they did win the challenge before they swapped. I think had we gone back to that tribal council, had they lost, we would have been able to see how the dominoes had been set up for him to push them down. And I think for George, knowing that they'll go back, Simon has an idol and they have this alliance of 5, they can't even flush Simon's idol. There's going to have to be 3 votes on Fraser anyway, and they're going to lose Geordie, maybe less dramatically, but they're going to lose Geordie in that anyway. Like, where to from there for them? So I think that from a viewing perspective, it looks worse just because you could have had a 5, you know, a unified 5 going into swaps. Like, you could have, but you just as easily could have gone back to a tribal council. But because we didn't see that as viewers, we don't see that structure set up that he had done so phenomenally well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Um, I love George. Okay. I am just a unapologetic stan, but I feel like that being so public about being with Shawnee and Liz, you know,
Yeah.
at you and Nick talked about this. I'm just worried that I feel like that it's hard for me to see the scenario that he ends up like coming out. Like, again, I'm relishing it while it's happening, but I don't feel like George is on a winning trajectory.
It's interesting. I mean, he's on the George trajectory, you know, like but he's on it at its best. I think like this is what it's always going to be. Like, I mean, like to you, it's basically, I think it's like an opinion thing based on like, do you want to prepare for a swap or do you want to prepare for like setting up your tribe well before a swap in terms of what he's doing with that? And in terms of like the lack of subtlety, that is George. You know, like George and Kara were like bonded for life in the last season. They were playing idols on each other. It's going to be pretty clear. I think for George as a player, it's always very extreme. It's not exactly subtle.
Mm-hmm.
George is not a subtle person. I don't think this needs to be said.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
He's not a subtle
Yeah.
person? Okay.
But like
Yeah.
in terms of, yeah, I mean, do you like see the perspective in terms of like setting it up, or you still like be unified for the swap, be a bit more congenial, you know, like be a bit more inclusive, maybe?
It's day 15 of a 50-day game. And look, that you and I have talked many times over the years, and I have questioned some of the all-time greats of Australian Survivor of like, what is
Yes.
David doing? It's day 3. It's day 3 of a 50-day game. Like, you can't play this. And again, so maybe that
And you
I
can.
am.
Some people can. Some people do that 47 days, you know?
And so that maybe my brain is so ruined from Survivor, US Survivor, especially US Survivor in the, you know, postmodern era, the new era of, you make a big move, you make a big spectacle, guess what? You're the next one out. I mean, that is US Survivor right now to a T. And look, you listen to me. Like, I am so much I'm getting so much out of watching this play out. Maybe I can't separate what I see happen on US Survivor from what the players are able to do for my enjoyment on Australian Survivor.
Well, I think well, you know, when George, obviously, when he took 6 players away from the first tribal council, which we covered together of Brains versus Brawn, that was a huge spectacle. I did not. I think I spent a long time disagreeing with that as a move,
Mm-hmm.
because it left him in a really bad spot. It was a bad social move, which this obviously was too in terms of like Geordie, but like was a great social move with Steve. So I think like it's a better social move that we've seen like from George before. It's also early on, but he's also a returnee. And some people have seen his season that are playing with him. Some of them have. So and they
Mm-hmm.
all know who he is. I just there's nowhere to hide for him. And like how long is he gonna spend trying to hide and failing? You know, like and how much will he lose in that like fool's errand? It's
I so
not, lean in,
Yeah, I don't
basically.
know if it's like trying to hide, but I just feel like that making additional relationships, giving himself more outs. I feel like that I would like to see that for him. Again, but who am I to argue with George?
Yeah, and but then look at the this was done in service of making that relationship with Stevie. Like in
Hmm.
terms of like Stevie versus Geordie and Fraser, again, probably one of them needs to be lost. One of them needs to be lost if they go back to a tribal council, but if they don't, you have that as an option. Like now he's in a swap with Stevie, and I feel like that's to the death. Where like Geordie is still chaotic, he's still got his own agenda, but he did seem very loyal to George. George really got him over. And then who is Fraser? Like Geordie's yeah,
We'll never
emotional
know.
support newbie. Like, yeah, but
Yeah.
like, is the phrase like is that important to George to lose? Because it does seem like 2-1. Again, like you will have to lose one of them at another tribal council. But like,
Hmm.
is Fraser with George or is Fraser with Geordie? Who's with George?
Yeah.
Like, is
I,
that
I
is
just
that a loss?
For me, I love the Geordie thing. I love that, like, oh, okay, nobody thinks we're working together and we're doing this thing. And to me, that felt like a very valuable piece to blow up for seemingly like to win
For
over
Stevie,
Steve. Yeah.
yeah,
Who I
but
love Steve
Stevie,
also. I love Stevie also.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I was having fun with Geordie and George's like cross alliance.
Hmm.
Especially having come from doing Talking Tribal with George last season on Geordie's season, and George was like really not loving Geordie, and I was like, I'm concerned for how that's going to be. And to see that, I loved it. I enjoyed it, like how it might have impacted the Sarah vote that we spoke about. Push came to shove quickly. Maybe it could have been even quicker, but between Simon and George had to make like a real flip. So a lot of that value, that secrecy would have been lost. Like they would have just been aligned, and now he can be aligned
Yeah.
with Stevie, who's much more controllable. I feel because Geordie still is the Joker.
Hmm.
Yeah, and for me, if Simon's going back without an idol somehow, then yeah, keep unity, keep 5/4 numbers for sure. But like once you're going back as 5 with Simon and an idol, and like the odds of having to lose one of Geordie or Fraser and both of their relationships to me is just like that. That to me is the kicker. Like it's all about how he's setting up the villains tribe, which I thought was so phenomenal. It's just so unfortunate we never saw it play out. But you can't. Well, then there was a swap. Like you should be predicting trends. Like sure, but like how much are you going to be relying on production structures when you can control your own game? I think something has to be said for taking your game into your own hand, controlling your own fate instead of lying there every night praying to Macedonian Jesus that the swap's going to come tomorrow. Because if it doesn't, your game is in a worse spot. You know.
One minor nitpick for Australian Survivor to have week 3 kick off with the George Tribal Council. I feel like was I don't know how they could have done it differently, if they could have
Yeah.
like done a bonus 4th episode last week,
Oh, please,
but to
thank
have
God
like
they didn't.
the couple of days after to
I
be able
know.
to talk, like, was this a good move, was it a bad move? Because I mean, then you get to see ultimately, like, we get to a swap, ultimately, like, George is still in the game, so it's sort of like, okay, it's a little bit more of a gray area, like, was whereas, like, I think we really could have had some more fun talking about it, had it been like the end of a cycle, but that's a very minor nitpick.
Yeah, I'm grateful there weren't 4 in a week. I think I'm I
Mhm.
think I'm at the end of my tether. But like, yeah, I agree because obviously, like, I was interstate and people are like, "Is there gonna be emergency coverage?" And I was like, "I'm at a wedding," and obviously I speak about it all at the end of the week, so it was like a lot of time between that. But I think it serves well that at least the rest of the week, especially that episode 9 is really, really fun because you come out of the
Mhm.
whole week being like, "What a great time we just had." I loved episode 9 as well. Like, that was my second favorite episode of the season easily. It was so fun and so funny, I feel. And the swap and the auction and all of it was great.
Yeah, we got the swap this week. We can jump in. Is there anything you want to talk about from the heroes before the swap?
I mean, is anything that reaches out to you about this extremely entertaining tribe?
Yeah. Too bad that Ben and Jerry couldn't get on the same page.
Yeah, well, that people are saying they couldn't because it's as if you're not hungry enough out there. with the thought of
Right.
ice cream. Yeah.
Too much ice cream talk. But once Jerry
Stay
said
away
that
from each
Ben had
other.
a silver tongue, that was it. They weren't
Yeah.
able to, the silver fox versus the silver tongue.
I know.
And
I mean, I wanted your thoughts on Jerry coming back and the way they all treated him. Like, that was one of my favorite scenes of the week. Him sitting around and then being like, Jerry, please, are you're not gonna dog us, right? You're not gonna
Yeah,
vote us out.
I was kind of
Yeah.
surprised that I guess that he did end up doing it, but I guess he just like I do think that Nick said this on the podcast. It was like, I gotta go back and see Sharni. Gotta
Yeah, I think that
go
was
back and
probably a big
check
part.
in. Yeah.
Gotta go back to see her get voted out. Like,
But yeah, I mean Ben really hustling over there trying to, make some moves. Um was it the right move for Ben to play an idol to get out Sharni?
yeah, I mean, I just thought that. Well, it was obviously the right move for him to play an idol. Otherwise, he would have gone
Sure,
home. I
but
think, yeah.
to get Sharni, who
Well,
cares?
I think he was trying to get Shani out fully and
Yes.
not play the idol, but it didn't work. But like Shani or Jerry for him, like he's not working with any of them. I think we see what happens when like these, people in the minority have to like run for their lives, turn against each other, like push each other in front of the bus, and like there's no connection there, which is eventually upsetting because Ben and Jerry can't get on the same page, like ice cream puns aside.
Yes, get on the same
So I mean,
page.
I
Yep.
don't I don't yeah, and Page puns aside, I don't feel like Jerry or Shani mattered to him. I just think he thought there was a possible
Right.
out there for him.
But like there was no bigger target that he could go after. I just feel like he's trying to like have his cake and eat it too. Of like,
Ice
okay,
cream.
well,
Yeah.
I'm trying to stay in the game, and then I'm also trying to like ingratiate myself to the meat tray.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what it is. I
Like
think
I'm
that
not
we've
targeting
seen
you
that.
guys. I just want to stay in the game.
But don't we often see that in Survivor where it's like, I mean, he does it later on when he has literal options, number options at a swap when he's like, we got to show that we're
Yeah.
loyal here. It's like this was like numerically more difficult. Like I don't even know if someone like Haley's necessarily going with it. I don't know if anyone's working with him. So all he has is his idol. All he can do is try and get votes on someone they will actually vote for, which is Shani. Later, when he has actual numbers, he doesn't do it. I think we see how that like it gets internalized. Something that really stuck out for me is he says to Jerry at the Swap Tribal Council, he's like, "They're sus on you." Is sus on something that they say in America? They're suspicious.
Yeah, I've heard it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's like, they're sus on you because you went to the villains, and they're sus on me because of the last tribal council. And I'm like, because of the last tribal council, you got a majority of votes. You're not suspicious for saving yourself, for daring to save yourself in that. And it's that way that you internalize it. You're wrong. You're playing. You're the issue here. And he has to prove trust with them. Prove trust with them. They voted him out. Like I think that you internalize to the point where they're the system, they're right, and you're the problem.
Let's talk about the episode 9 because this was
Yes.
just such a fun party of like it starts off with okay, bring everybody in. It's the auction, Australian Survivor auction. Again, when we talk about things that Australian Survivor is doing better than you said on the podcast, a swap and an auction. Wow, how novel.
Yeah. And I just think it's so funny that like tribal councils are so bad in US Survivor, and then Australian Survivor is like the best tribal council specifically of all time. I feel like was like a subtweet almost to US Survivor. The whole week was.
I don't want to keep beating this drum, but like, what are like the Australian Survivor is just like everything is just so much like there's more of it, and it's just I feel like it can breathe. I know it's the runtime of it also, but we can actually like spend time with these people. Everything isn't so rushed. And it's like US Survivor in a 42-minute package should be trying to simplify things as much as possible. It should be, hey, we only have 42 minutes. Let's slow this down. It's like, no.
Yeah, I was thinking about
we're
that.
making we have half as much time, half as many days, and we'll have 3 times as much stuff going on.
Yeah, I mean, there's been like it's just like reward and immunity. It's not like an external island or anything. I can like that, but obviously US Survivor's been like I don't know, a little homogenous with the way that they keep going to like the same external island. It's provided some fun stuff, but yeah, it's interesting that it feels like they have the opposite amount of times possibly with the way that they approach things. But like the auction, we miss the auction in US Survivor, don't we? The auction is so fun. Like I look forward to that, every season of US Survivor before they took
This
it
was
away.
so fun. It was
So fun.
There was so much fun. First off, that they combined it with with a swap to like really throw people off. And so they swapped, and then you were with your swap tribe, so that there was definitely some, potential chances for, misunderstandings and hard feelings going on there. So that was great. One pool of money, because I kind of feel like that the tribe auctions can be a little wonky sometimes.
In terms of what? I mean, because I
Just
like
in
the dilemma
Just in
aspect.
terms of like, I feel like there's not a ton of stakes. I feel like that you're buying like food for the whole group, so there's less of a chance for like hard feelings. But this was sort of like you had a smaller, people were like bidding for things at like not there was I don't think there was anything that you were winning for your tribe, right?
Yeah, there wasn't. But and that was the thing, is like US Survivor's like the auction's broken, put it in the bin. And we've seen International Survivor have so much fun with the auction. Survivor South Africa did like a Yankee swap. I don't even think that the US Survivor, I don't think that the auction is broken. Let people go to rocks for advantages if that's so much of an issue, or have them out earlier, or say that there aren't advantages. Like, let's just have an auction. There are ways to solve it. But I think pre-merge auctions, that's a really fun way, because then if are you really going to go spend your whole allotment of money on a rock for an advantage in your tribe, or is that going to be more like we'll bid for food? And I think that
Mm-hmm.
let them just do that. Like the way that US Survivor just gave up on the auction like that, they're like, it was ruined in season 30 and it's done forever. That makes me upset, and I think more thought could have been given to fixing it in easy ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think between that and then when in Survivor San Juan del Sur, when the touchy subjects got broken, like that,
Yeah,
like
they're like done.
like
Those are like
those
my
two
two
seasons
favorite
shot
things.
back to back, and just like that's it, we're not doing it anymore.
I
That's it.
love those. That's my favorite challenge. Well,
Yep.
it was more the chop challenge, but like I love touchy subjects. It's my favorite challenge of all time. And the auction. It's a staple of the show.
It's from
We're
my, I
taking the
mean,
stuff from US Survivor.
what's my immunity win?
Yeah, and it's gone. And for what?
Yeah.
These things are
Yeah.
easily solvable. They're not with more thought should be given to how we can just, like, tweak little things. Have the advantage come out first, or, they have, as I had, there multiple covered items. People kept bidding thinking it was an advantage. People kept waiting in case it wasn't an advantage, and then it was chocolate, and then it was an onion, and then it was a surprise party. Like, it doesn't there
Yeah.
are ways that clearly it's not broken. We did it right now. We did it this week,
Yeah,
Like,
the onion was great. Ben was bidding on the scroll, and then it said you want a green, a brown onion.
yeah, brown onion.
Okay, yeah, I don't know where
Onion
brown
alive.
onion is. Yeah,
I think it's just an onion that's brown.
Okay, nothing
That was hard.
special about it.
No, I don't think so. I mean, people were
Okay.
saying, like, Khan was saying, take it back to camp. I'm like, but you can't, right? You can't take things out of the auction. So he's just sitting there eating that onion.
Yeah, he tried to, and then ultimately he spit it out. And so then the George thing. This was wild. Okay, all right. So George gets to win a chance to go to that. He is the person of honor. That he is the guest of honor at a surprise party.
How fun. Yeah, so last season as well, they gave away $60,000 in a challenge.
Okay,
Five
see,
thousand
I didn't
dollars
know that.
among Yeah,
Yeah,
to Khan. Well, he won it. He didn't bid on it. And I mean, he got voted out that same episode, because of all they wanted to vote him out anyway, but I don't think people loved that. You were like, that's more than a tenth of the prize money.
yeah,
You get five, like that's a salary. That is so much
hmm
money that he just got at the surprise parties, and it was in secret, which is even better.
yeah. But I think that that's such an interesting thing because other than like winning the car on, U.S. Survivor, I mean, that's something that U.S. Survivor has never had, where there is a prize that is meaningful outside of the game. Every other like thing you win on Survivor is either something to help you advance in the game or some sort of like substance or like, love from home. Like
Yeah.
those are the boxes of things that you can win. And I think that's a fascinating thing to add to the game of the opportunity to win cash prizes in the actual game. I think that's something that I think that the producers of Survivor around the world I think could have a lot of fun with.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the sponsor, right? I mean, we did compare it to the car reward. They have this like set for life sponsor that's what it is. It's like a lotto type of thing where you win like these, monthly prizes. So that's why they do it. I think it matters less in US Survivor because there is this like graduated payment plan based on how far you get. And we almost never hear about that. Like we hear it was obviously important in All Stars where that was more money until the million, right? And people
I
were
didn't
like,
know about it when I was playing.
oh, really? I feel like that's always been part of the law. Like that's why people were so loyal to it. They just wanted to get their 250 grand or whatever.
Well,
That
yes. So yeah, in Survivor All Stars, yes, people did know about that, and they didn't raise the prize from $1 million. They raised the other prizes, which was like probably the worst idea to do. But when I was
yes.
playing in the Amazon, I did not know that there were other prizes along the way, and that I remember like the day, like Jenna and Heidi was like, "Hey, like, do you know what third place, fourth place gets?" I'm like, no, I don't know. And they were like, and they
That must
told
have
me.
been a nice surprise.
And
Yeah.
I like, it's like, is that true? Is that? And I thought they wouldn't really get into it, but that was
Wow.
not something I knew going out there. I was like,
Do you not
hold
like
on,
read the
yeah.
like obviously information you would have had on that? I mean, but we don't really talk about that in US Survivor, and I think it's meaningful. Like I remember talking about it like when Ben gave up his game in Winners at War, which was like a personal move that I liked from a personal perspective. I was like, he just gave up, rather than coming third, he came fifth. What did he give up? Like 40K US?
Hmm.
About, I can't do the math right now. He would have got what, like 85K or even
Yeah,
more if it
but
was a 0-0
I
tie.
mean,
And
how do you put a price on that? Him and Sarah are friends for life, Shannon.
well, that was tens of
They have
thousands of
they
dollars.
have
That's what I'm
they
saying.
have
They've
an
been there for
unbreakable bond now.
yeah, I mean, I would personally choose $40,000 over a lifelong friendship with Sarah Lucina, but that's just me. Like I think like and I mentioned it at the time because we very rarely talk about that graduated payment plan
Hmm.
in US
Yeah.
Survivor.
And
In
I'm
Australian
saying that
Survivor, it's
I
not the
think they
same.
broke up being friends on the Challenge USA. Spoilers.
Oh,
Yeah.
because I didn't want. Is that what happened? How have I not heard that?
It's one
I
of the
mean,
things that happened, I think.
oh well, she should be paying him 40
I think
grand
so. I'm
because
not sure. I'm not, I don't want to speak out of school. I'm not sure. I've, maybe.
all right. Well, it was then maybe not the best move. But I mean, I loved it from a personal standpoint.
Hmm.
But this is what I'm saying. Like in Australian Survivor, second place gets $0. Every single
Hmm.
thing. $500,000 for the winner, $0.
Zero
Everyone else,
dollars? They don't get an appearance fee?
they
They
do.
don't cover.
They get like a daily like I got this when I was on Top Model. It was like $100 a day to like pay your rent, and I was living from like working, not working, living with my
Hmm.
parents, obviously.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Ooh, money," but it was like not a lot of money, and that's it. And the same
Hmm.
amount as long as you're there, and then probably onto the jury. And it's not, and then George gets 60K, and then also someone will probably get a car. There's usually a car award in Australian Survivor, and those are like the major prizes. And if you come second, which George did, it would get
Hmm.
no money. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Big vote also in episode 9 that we saw
Yeah.
Shawnee play the idol for George. I think it's an interesting decision. You and Nick talked about this on the podcast of that. Does she play the idol if she doesn't find the second idol?
Yeah.
I think it was an easy decision because she had to. I feel like it was. I think that's a harder decision if she only has the one.
Do you think so? Do you think like for what George has been to her? For the
I
majority?
don't.
For the majority on this tribe? Like, if she doesn't save George then, how is
Hmm.
she well, they'll take out Ben next because Ben. But like it seems like she's probably out next or the one after that. Whereas now they have like a whole
Hmm.
majority of that tribe.
Yeah. But she still has an idol that nobody
Oh, that's
knows
true. She does
about.
have the idol, yeah. She has a second idol. But still, I mean,
You
then you're
know.
like, it's the same thing that we're saying in terms of George's move, in terms of like, do you want to be on a life raft with your idol and hopefully other grievances like Ben getting taken out before you and then praying to Macedonian
Hmm.
Jesus for a merge on a weaker tribe? It's something
Yeah.
she could get through. Or do you want to be in control? Do you want to know you can go to as many tribal councils as you want and be not
Hmm.
just like safe, but like dominant, and you can set up your game? I think like for these strong players, you do not need to rely on let me hold on for dear life. I think
Hmm.
like like set up your game and control it. That's how good they are. That's where they should be.
I'm not saying it would be the wrong move. I think it would definitely be a harder decision.
Yeah. I think a harder decision that she does.
Yeah.
I hope she
Okay.
would do it.
I hope
I
she.
hope
I
she
hope
would
she would
do
do
it
it
because
too.
there's so much stakes in this vote. I mean, again, we don't know how it would go on the 4-4. A question that we did get in some messages that I got that I, after the recap with Nick, which was interesting, was like for the heroes, because a lot of this is also on like the incompetence of the heroes. Voting for George, who just came back from a surprise party, whispering right next to Shawnee, not pulling over Jerry. A lot of things went wrong. They basically only had Ben.
Hmm.
But like this question in common has come up, like why even tell Jerry the real name? Because we talk about it, like, and we did, like, then let's discuss it. Like, did Jerry tell Shawnee the name? Whether he did or he didn't, like, surely it's not optimal to tell like the clear swing vote who's like, I
Mhm.
can't give you an answer. Well, he says that to Ben later. He's like, I will vote with you, but who's like clearly a huge flight risk. And instead be like, we're voting for Shawnee. And then if he's with you, then there's one vote on Shawnee and you've won on a 4-3-1 against George. And there's not like this idle play worry. And if he's not with you, then like you don't want to give him the name, right? So either way,
Mhm.
don't tell Jerry. You don't need him as a fifth. You just need to make sure that he's, voting for a villain.
Yeah, I was
So
gonna go
that
the
made no
other way.
sense.
Is there a way they could have gotten out of this without having to play the idol? You know, that I thought the show didn't make a big deal that it was gonna be 4-4 at
Yeah.
the tribal council. Like, I wonder, like, could they have gotten anybody to flip on a revote?
Yeah. Well, you hope Ben, but I don't know anymore. Like where he's like it's illogical anyway that he's not going with them to begin with. So it's
Mhm.
just like it seems like he should, but would he? In terms of playing the idol, it also does make, as I mentioned on the Nick podcast, it makes a rock draw more favorable to them, takes out George as an option, gives them a 60% chance of winning a rock draw because someone's protected. George is protected
Mhm.
from having to go to rocks. Yeah, it's a 4-4, and I don't know. Like if
And
I get to speak
Flick,
to
does
Ben
she
one
have
day,
any
I'd have to ask.
connection with potentially voting with George and Shawnee?
I mean, she's played with George, but like more negatively so. Flick
Okay.
seems tight with like Paige. Flick seems like integral to the heroes, I feel.
Yeah.
And she's always voting for George. So like I don't know. It would come down to like, do you want to go to Rocks
Yeah.
pre-merge? And then who would be doing that? Like if say they vote for say Shawnee plays out on herself and they vote for George and like these two targets are out, then it's Jerry and Stevie making this decision. And Stevie's to the death. And I think Jerry's whole thing is like, screw you guys forever, heroes. So like I think
Yeah.
those are two good people who are like in it, and then it'll be down to like, do you want to go to Rocks heroes or do you want to flip?
Shannon, I will say that what my first negative thing about Australian Survivor here, besides that they didn't make this George Tribal Council at the end of a week, um, I was not nervous for George in any way, shape, or form watching the episode. I wasn't spoiled, and I felt like that, like, boy, if George got voted out, I do think Twitter would have gone nuts. But I also feel like
Yeah.
that the page boot edit I felt like was strong in episode 9.
That is true. There's a little bit of plot armor for a lot of these people. I mean, it's played out to the like. That's one
Mm-hmm.
thing I'll say about this season. It's hard because I can go either way. Like I just watched, Survive South Africa returnee season that pained me. I loved it more than anything in the world, but I cried every episode losing these titans of the game. It was a full returnee season, and it was hard, seeing these big players go early. So I'm so happy to have the big players still in. We haven't lost one returnee to a vote.
It's
I was devastated
amazing.
about
It's
Jackie.
amazing.
That's amazing, but does it take a little bit out sometimes when it's like Fraser, like the stakes are so well. The stakes are very high on who could go, and it obviously felt like Simon was in trouble, and like these are big votes. But then you like lose that, so like you don't come out of any episode being like, that beautiful, exquisite Survivor pain to this point. But then we have them in for longer. Like, do you think is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I love it. It's one of my favorite things about Australian Survivor. It's like watching like The Walking Dead. I'm like, oh, they're not going to kill the big characters. Like, okay, well, let's watch Paige and Sharni.
Yeah, yeah,
And I mean, this week alone, I mean, this Frasier, Sharni, Paige. I mean, you
no
couldn't
notes.
draw it
Yeah,
up better.
yeah. I mean, I think it'll make it meaningful. Obviously, when the first important person to go goes, you'll be like, "Oh my god!" Like they actually like killed off a relevant person.
Mm-hmm.
So at the moment, that hasn't happened, and it's been, it's been 3 weeks. I think it. Yeah, I mean, it is interesting
It'd
that
be tough to
has
get through
happened.
the
I think
next week without 3 relevant people because I don't
who
know
would have to go?
who.
Who can we go?
Well,
David
Matt, I'm
Zaharakis doesn't
looking
have a
at Matt. I'm
confessional.
looking at you.
Matt can go. Yeah,
David, I'm
100%.
sorry. I know you have a
David's in
big
a very good
following.
spot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
But
we're left with a lot of important people, like whether you like them or not.
yeah.
Yeah, I can't think of the ones who aren't important because they're not here. They're on the show.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So
What
it is
else
interesting.
was it like really people buzzing about this week on Australian Survivor?
I mean, I don't think God likes Paige. People really like that line. I don't know if
Yeah.
you loved it. I thought that was really funny. To the humor of that whole thing, that whole episode, I thought was great. I mean, I'd be interesting to hear your thoughts. I was just thinking more about like that old codger Jerry. Flips to a 4 as we're saying. I think would be willing to go to Rocks, and Nick and I were like, do it. What do the heroes have for you? Do what you need. Go down with the ship if you need to, but even better that it won out. Do you feel like because that's been a big debate, and I've been like believing the narrative that Shawnee read the vibe. Do you feel like she read the vibe that George was the name, or do you think Jerry was like, I'm all in, I'm properly flipping, I'm not weighing it up, George is the name and she knew. Like, I think that's the one that I'm still debating within myself.
That's such a good question. That Shawnee mentioned about that they were whispering at the tribal
And they were.
council, and she's
It was
like,
that
like, what is this, guys? This is
child's
amateur
play.
hour.
Yeah.
So, but I do feel like that Jerry would tell them what was going on, and I think that part of it was also that that Jerry, I think, got like really burned by Ben, and because Ben was part of the group, like I think it actually like in a
We
way like what's that?
Well, he took out Shani, but he also
Yeah,
saved Jerry. Like,
I
so,
guess
but
so.
Jerry might hate that more, like he hasn't been with them. I agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like that maybe because Ben was like on the side of like, let's take out George. Well, I think that Jerry might have like locked Jerry in of like, and why wouldn't he tell them the name?
Yeah. I mean, if God hates Paige, I think Jerry does too. Like she's also been like in that power structure. I thought she was like particularly awkward at that town meeting they had with Jerry sitting there like Santa Claus and them all being like, my wish for Christmas is you don't, turn on us at a swap.
Hmm.
And him being like,
Yeah.
no, you get coal.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah. And I want to say the most annoying thing this week was Paige versus Sharni, who dropped the box.
Yeah,
Who
it's true.
cares?
More time was spent on that than anyone needed. Certainly me. Yeah, I mean, I think for Jerry, like, I hope for his sake, like that he did tell them, because then like we're not giving enough credit to Jerry. Like then he's like a big part of like winning this vote for them. Otherwise he obviously is like flipping to a 4-4 where anything could happen. And I still think that's fine. Like I still think that's better than being with the heroes. But like I think if he's telling them like this is the name, if he's all in like that, which he obviously is, he voted that way. But like if he was before, because before he was like, I'm weighing it up. Shawnee's saying she doesn't know if she can trust him. Like that's clearly the narrative. But I just thought it was interesting because you don't see Jerry ever trying to pull Ben. We only see Ben trying to pull Jerry to the heroes. Is he relying on it like at a tie, being like, Ben, this is your time? I don't know. I just think it's interesting that like for Jerry, he hates the heroes so much that he'd go to a
Yeah.
possible 4-4. And Ben, who's been voted out by them as well, but even more so, won't even go to the 5-3. Like I think that was the biggest takeaway of the episode. Obviously, I think for a lot of people was like Ben sticking there, and
Hmm.
yeah. So that I think that was a big
Do
thing.
you think that they could win? Now, again, maybe you lose Jerry by trying to do this, but do you think that they could win Ben over to the George and Shawnee side of things?
Now or
Now,
Ben?
yes, now.
Will they want to? What does Ben give them? I
And
mean,
what are you going to throw a number away like
I
that?
agree. I agree. I agree. I think that they should try to get Ben. I think Ben should have come to them before. How much is Ben going to be able to fall on his sword? Like he voted for
Hmm.
George. He's stuck with the heroes.
Like they're gonna
And
need
he's.
numbers eventually. That they
I
can't just
agree. Yeah.
have the Spice Girls and Jerry go up against the Costco meat tray at this point.
Costco Matrix. But there's only
It's
five
getting
Spice
bigger.
Girls. Yeah, but you can't have more people. There's not a sixth Spice Girl, right?
Well,
So that's it.
that's what I'm saying. That's it. We're running out of people on the Spice Girls.
Yeah. No, it does feel like Ben should be part of a long-term coalition for them. It also feels like taking out Flick and Matt means they're going to get even more pummeled in challenges, and maybe they just at that point don't care. Even if they like take out Flick and Matt, like does Ben even make it to emerge? Like, are there enough
Yeah,
tribal councils where like even if he's third, I think that he's in a really bad spot,
and
physically being now like on the other side.
yeah, and just going back to, the like how we started it talking about George's move, like I feel like, okay, well, Jordy is sort of like on an island over there on the new Heroes tribe, but maybe you could have thought like, okay, in a perfect world, okay, maybe Jordy is working on, dismantling the meat tray. We'll meet back up with him at the merge. But now like
With
Jordy got
what?
burnt. What do you mean?
But like dismantling it how? Like he's kind of
Well,
screwed
I
anyway.
mean, he's
Yeah.
trying
Yeah.
to, destroy it from the inside. And we did see Jordy sort of like reconnect with Shawnee and Liz after all of
Yeah.
that. So maybe that there is hope that they could get the band back together. But I just hate that the Jordy and George thing got torched.
Yeah. You say that, and I agree with parts. It's like, okay, well, if you have Geordie there, at least like Liz and Geordie might have something like, but there might be a connection there. There might be an option there. But then if it's like, say, they've gone back to a tribal council, like like Stevie is a massive part of what they have. like not just
Mhm.
as a number, but as like a true connection. So what if they're there and they've gone back to a tribal council and they voted out Fraser? Firstly, is Geordie even with them then at that point? And also, do they
Mhm.
have like, at that point, maybe they have like another hero on their tribe? It's hard to see how the permutations play out because, again, I think so much of it was down to the fact that they didn't go back to a tribal council. I think that let's play it out. Like they go back the next night to tribal council. Shani doesn't drop the box. Paige doesn't drop the box. Whoever dropped it didn't drop it. And Chiz screw it up somehow. And they go back to a tribal council and they vote out Fraser. The swap doesn't look great anyway. And then Stevie's not there to be tight with them. And Simon doesn't, he still has his idol, like his idol. So I think that's what it is. Like I need
Mhm.
everyone to like think about them going to tribal council the
Oh,
next night. And that's
have
what it is.
has there been enough talk about, did George need to play his idol at that tribal council? Like did he know definitely that he wasn't getting the votes?
I don't think he knew for sure. I mean, we go into this at length on the Nick recap, so I don't want to like
Mhm.
hugely repeat. But I think
Yeah.
for me personally, like as a smoking gun, as an offensive move, as really putting it to Simon, negating his votes, negating Steve's vote, in terms of like creating that divide that's not just based on if Steve has the votes, he's gonna go home, and then Simon could be like, well, maybe he doesn't, and then it's not as much about them separating. Now it's like
Mhm.
I'm safe, and so who else could it
Mhm.
be? And then it's like, wow, you really are willing to sacrifice him. So I think, in terms of just like being safe and in terms of the smoking gun offensively, I back it. I don't disagree with anything George did. I think this was fine. And then look, they just get a new idol and they play, like they're also like probably gonna find idols. So like
Mhm.
start spending him,
Okay. All right, Shannon, anything
Have I
else?
convinced you on these things or are you still up and
I
down on it?
just I just wonder, like, I loved the pageantry. I love the drama of it all. I was thoroughly entertained, and I am eternally grateful to George for doing it. I just wonder if there was a way not to have had as much collateral damage and gotten most of the same things.
To have gotten different things. It's a choice. It's a choice. If you're choosing unity, he clearly did not. You're choosing unity or division.
Hmm.
Division and power and control on your tribe and intense connections as well. Not just like working together, but like that. And that's what he chose, like to the death, And I think that that's like George's MO is like his people in this like really strong way. Or you choose like a more congenial, unified thing that could go poorly, that's more reliant on the game structures and that could be a more like cohesive thing. And George chose division. And I actually think like I admire the power. And if anyone can go 47 days at that speed, slicing and dicing rather than just like bringing people in with open arms, like it probably is George, but it's a choice that he made. There was one or two ways to go about it.
Yeah. Well, it was one of the highlights of my week for sure, and
I'm
certainly
glad.
an incredible moment that I'm sure when we get together with Mike Bloom in December of 2023, and we talk about the year in Survivor,
We'll
that
talk
is going to
about it.
be one of the things that we certainly spent some time talking about. So, so happy that we got to talk about it this week. Shannon, any other final thoughts? Australian Survivor Week 3?
No, I loved it. I wanted to know what you thought of Sam Frost on Australian Survivor. I don't know if you know
Yes,
the lore.
I don't know. I heard you and Nick talking so
Yeah.
much about Sam Frost, and I was like, is this
Yes.
Mr. Frost's sister?
Yeah, we talked pre-show. I don't know who Mr. Frost is. The only Mr. Frost they know is Geordie. But
Mhm.
yeah, Sam Frost, very famous person in Australia. Do you know Hannah Brown
Of
from?
The Bachelor?
Yeah, I kind of feel like she's our Hannah Brown.
Oh yeah, well, Hannah Brown is on Special Forces: World's Toughest Test.
Oh, I didn't know that. We have that. We have SAS. I think that you've taken that. Like we took it from the UK and then we have it.
You
I
have
watched one
World's
episode
Toughest
of that
Test?
show. It's not called that, but I think that's what it is. And it was
Mm-hmm.
horrible. The episode I watched of it was
So is the one in the
horrible.
US.
It was disturbing. They covered their
Yeah.
heads with hoods and they made them punch
Yes.
each other in the face.
Yes.
A woman got punched by a man in the episode I watched in
Check
the
out our
Australian one.
episode 8 recap.
A lot.
It
Um,
is.
yeah, Lockie the Bachelor was on it from Survivor.
Oh. World's Toughest Test?
The equivalent in SAS is what it's. I think it's
Yes.
the same thing. It sounds like it's the same thing.
Sounds like it's the same thing.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so yeah, equivalent. So Sam Frost was the first ever bachelorette that Australia had. She was a very, very famous person. She won a season of The Bachelor and then got dumped for third place. this is her whole life story. And then she was a bachelorette, and then she had like an anti-vax controversy, and then she met Geordie. Wait, no. So this is how she met Geordie. Last season, you covered the first week of last season with me, so I'm sure that you'll remember Jay and Alex, two
How
people
could
who
I
were on the
forget?
last
Yes.
season. Jay got 0 confessionals. Alex got basically medevaced with a back injury, and Jay was her boyfriend at the time, and Alex was her brother, and that's why they were on the season together. That was their connection, a brother and a boyfriend of a woman who was Sam Frost, former Bachelorette Sam Frost. Is this
Okay.
more complicated than the George Tribal Council? Through Alex, she met Geordie a year ago, and now they're having a baby, and she was on the show in video format. And it's
Yes.
wild to me that baby only exists because of Survivor.
Mm-hmm.
She met him because of Survivor.
Incredible.
Amazing. And Geordie now is with Bachelorette Sam Frost having a baby.
I like that she
Do
had
you
the
understand what's
overalls
going
for the
on?
baby. I like that.
Yeah, but they weren't purple. And I think,
No.
Bryce will have an issue with that because we like the purple overalls.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, we've been missing that in the US too, right? Like the loved ones aspect. Obviously, we get letters, but like I know that they do the creepy like videos in the sanctuary, but like a real video call, I think that's nice. That's novel. Like
Why not?
you
Why
learn a
can't
lot
we
about
do that?
Geordie.
Yeah.
100%. It
So
looked good. I thought it was good content.
I thought it was good too. All right, Shannon. Of course, catch everything that Shannon is doing over in the Survivor Global podcast feed. Go to robswebsite.com/slash survive. I'm sorry, robswebsite.com/global feed for that. Of course, you can catch Shannon as well on television on Talking Tribal.
Yes, that's on 10 Play. There's also on YouTube for the international fans. It's also in podcast form, but if you want to watch it because it's so fun on set at the moment, yeah, it's also on the Channel 10 YouTube, and they just like upload that like a day later. So this is the third time I've spoken about this week, and I wouldn't have it any other way, Rob. Like I'm having such a phenomenally good time. I'm enjoying the season so much. I think it's genuinely hilarious, and like Survivor needs to be funny. Like Survivor's at its best when it's funny, but Australian Survivor like really needs to be funny because it's so long.
If we're comparing the U.S. and Australia, U.S. Survivor is not funny at this point. Like
Jesus,
the
come for
last
the jugular.
No, I'm just like I'm trying to be like the last 3 seasons of
42 is
Survivor.
funny, I think.
There are moments, but I feel like that they're like because look, I look for funny moments to like put in the voicemail show and stuff like that. So I keep a close eye on this stuff.
Right.
Like I feel like that the last 3 seasons have had like one of the biggest things that has been taken out of modern day Survivor has been sort of like lighthearted, funny moments.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that because I think that Australian Survivor, when it's at its absolute best, every second season, is really, really funny. Mostly by these like hilarious characters that create it, and it's so necessary. And I think that the self-seriousness and the heaviness will get you in Australian Survivor so much. But US Survivor has tended that way. We know like the deep stories and like those like basically narrative aspects where that's probably more of a focus for them. Whereas like I do think that there's been a real highlight this season on like leaving in all the funny one-liners, the challenge one-liners. There seems to be a fun, like despite the toxicity, which clearly is also a little bit there, but like there's like a fun kind of banter. And yeah, like I genuinely like it, Nick and I were saying it's like it's laugh out loud funny, and it needs to be. So that's been great too.
Well,
but wow,
I'm
you
loving
really
it.
buried US Survivor in this podcast, Rob.
What? Look, I got to keep it real.
Good job.
Okay.
Are you looking forward to 44? You're like,
I'm looking forward to it, but I'm just telling you that what Australian Survivor is by comparison reminding me about like, well, like why am I loving it so much? It's like, oh yeah, like I'm really getting to know these characters, and like the episodes aren't like, wait, what the hell is happening? And like it's that we're getting like to know like the tribe dynamics and like, oh, we can understand why a move happened as opposed to it just being like a total blur.
Yeah, maybe, you obviously covered 2016, which was not funny and so long and so dark. And then you were done forever. You never hosted it again. You gave it away, and who can blame you? And maybe if it had been a season like this, you'd be here right now covering Australian Survivor, and I'd be who knows where listening to it. But maybe
I think the Australian Survivor game is much closer to what I think the idealized Survivor game is, which is basically like an idol at camp, not a lot of other advantages going on, sort of like bigger tribes, and that's it. And then just let the players play, and that's it. Whereas US Survivor is like definitely not that at this point in time.
They're both so extreme and specific in their own ways. I feel New Era versus Australia, but we're missing the big tribes in US. We're missing the swaps. We're missing
Mhm.
that. Like we really have been. Um, yeah, and then Australian Survivor has their things that they're also doing tremendously wrong. So the middle ground being Survivor South Africa, that's the perfection. But definitely
Mhm.
when Australian Survivor's at its best, it's great. And I'm so glad that you are loving it, Rob. And I hope you get to keep up with it. And US Survivor is going to come up at a point, but hopefully we can do more of these, and you can it keeps you, on the hook.
Mhm. Okay. Well, I've come this far, okay? I mean, we're already at day 16.
We've already watched 9 episodes.
Mhm.
We're doing pretty
Mhm.
well. We're doing
Yeah.
pretty well. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Shannon, anything else for you?
No, thank you so much for having me. Great
Okay.
week to discuss. Thank you for everyone for listening.
Follow at Shannon Gates
Hashtag
on
Gates.
Twitter. Okay. Thank you so much for joining us. If you missed it, I got to go through. Look, we are excited about Survivor 44. Bryce, Isaiah, and I went through all of the 18 Survivor contestants on Issa Look. I'm going to get together with the First Lady of Podcasting, Nicole Cesternino, to talk about her thoughts on the cast. Nicole Stradamus will make her predictions and much more. Make sure you subscribe. RobIsAwebsite.com/subscribe. Take care, everybody. Have a good one. Bye.